My name is Noelle Parker. I am 58 years old, and I just paid $75,000 for my only daughter, Amanda's dream wedding. A wedding where she stood up in front of 200 guests and mocked the very life I had built to give her everything. I smiled through my tears as everyone laughed. Then something extraordinary happened. The groom's boss nearly choked on his champagne when he heard my name, and he asked for the microphone. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had someone underestimate your worth. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this story ends. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, about an hour outside of Detroit. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your business before you did, but there was comfort in that closeness too. My parents were hardworking people. Dad worked at the local factory, and Mom was a school secretary. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they taught me the value of honest work and saving for the future. Life had been following a predictable path. I was 20 years old and in my second year of community college studying business administration when everything changed. My parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver crossed the center line. They were killed instantly. I still remember the sheriff knocking on our door at 11:30 that night. My 17-year-old sister Lisa was still living at home, and suddenly, I became her guardian. I had to drop out of college immediately. There was no choice. The modest life insurance barely covered the funeral expenses, and the house had a mortgage that needed paying. I took any job I could find. During the day, I worked as an administrative assistant at a local insurance company. At night, I waitressed at a diner near our house. On weekends, I picked up bookkeeping work for small businesses. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. When Lisa graduated high school the following year, I convinced her to go to college. I promised I would figure out how to pay for it, even if it meant working myself to exhaustion. She was bright and deserved her chance. It was at the diner where I met Jackson, Amanda's father. He was passing through town, charming and full of big dreams. He worked in sales and was always talking about the next big commission that was just around the corner. We had a whirlwind romance, and when I found out I was pregnant at 23, he seemed excited. We weren't married, but he talked about building a life together. Those dreams evaporated quickly. When Amanda was 6 months old, Jackson announced he had a job opportunity in California. He promised to send for us once he was settled. 2 weeks later, his phone was disconnected, and the child support checks never came. I never heard from him again. So there I was, a single mother at 24, with a baby depending on me. I moved us into a tiny one-bedroom apartment where Amanda slept in a crib next to my bed. I worked 70-hour weeks taking on even more bookkeeping clients. While Amanda slept, I would study accounting books teaching myself skills to command higher rates. Every decision I made was with Amanda's future in mind. When she started showing interest in dance at age 5, I found a way to afford ballet lessons. I ate ramen noodles for dinner 3 nights a week to save for her proper dance shoes. When her elementary school teachers mentioned she was gifted, I researched and found a private school with a strong academic program. I took on more clients to afford the tuition. During those early years, Amanda was such a sweet child. She would draw pictures of the two of us holding hands with the words, "Best mom ever," scrawled across the top. She would proudly tell her dance teachers, "My mommy works really hard so I can dance." Those moments made every sacrifice worthwhile. I started a small bookkeeping business from our apartment so I could be home when Amanda returned from school. I would work late into the night after she went to bed, but at least I could help with homework and hear about her day. Slowly, my client base grew. I had a natural aptitude for numbers and for explaining financial concepts in ways small business owners could understand. My sister Lisa, who had finished college and started her own career, would sometimes warn me, "Noelle, you are giving that child everything. "What are you keeping for yourself?" I would always laugh it off. "I am keeping the joy of watching her succeed," I would say. Lisa would shake her head, but I was convinced I was doing the right thing. Looking back, I first noticed changes in Amanda when she was around 12. She came home from school one day unusually quiet. When I asked what was wrong, she hesitated before asking, "Mom, why can't we live in a big house like Brittany? Her mom doesn't even work." I explained as gently as I could about different family circumstances, how Brittany's father was a surgeon, and how I was doing my best as a single mom. Amanda seemed to accept this, but something had shifted. She had begun to compare our life to others and found it wanting. As middle school progressed, the incidents multiplied. Amanda started asking for designer clothes like her friends had. When I explained we couldn't afford them, she would slam her bedroom door and refuse to speak to me for hours. Once, when I picked her up from a birthday party in my old Honda, she asked me to drop her off a block away so her friends wouldn't see our car. One day, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. "No, my mom doesn't just do taxes," she said with irritation. "She owns her own financial consulting firm." My heart pinched. My small bookkeeping business was hardly a financial consulting firm. Amanda was reinventing me to impress her friends. I told myself it was just a phase. All teenagers get embarrassed by their parents, right? But deep down, I knew it was more than that. Amanda was ashamed of our life, of my work, of me. Still, I kept making sacrifices, convinced that giving her every opportunity would eventually lead to gratitude. Lisa saw what was happening. During one of our sister nights when Amanda was at a sleepover, she confronted me directly. "You are teaching that girl that your only value is what you can give her. She's learning to use you, Noelle." "That's not fair," I protested. "She's just going through normal teenage stuff." Lisa shook her head sadly. "There's normal teenage stuff, and then there's entitlement. You're raising a child who believes she deserves everything without appreciation." Her words stung because part of me feared they were true, but I pushed those doubts aside. Amanda was my whole world. I had to believe that my sacrifices would someday be understood and valued. When Amanda left for college, I thought our relationship might improve with some distance. I had managed to save enough for her to attend a prestigious university several states away. I had worked overtime for years, setting aside every extra penny. The day I dropped her off at her dorm, I felt both immensely proud and suddenly very alone. "Call me anytime," I told her as we said goodbye, "even if it's the middle of the night." "Sure, Mom," she replied, already scanning the quad for her roommate. Those first months, I called her every Sunday. Our conversations grew shorter each time. She was busy with classes, with new friends, with sorority events. I understood college was a time for independence, so I tried not to take it personally when weeks would pass without a call back. The pattern became predictable. Amanda would call when she needed something: money for sorority dues, extra funds for spring break in Cancun, a new laptop when hers crashed before finals. Between these calls, silence. During holidays, I would excitedly prepare her childhood favorites, only to receive a last-minute text that she had decided to spend Thanksgiving with her roommate's family in their vacation home, or that her friend had invited her on a ski trip over Christmas break. I would sit at my holiday table alone, or sometimes with Lisa, if she wasn't with her husband's family. I sent care packages every month that first year. Homemade cookies, her favorite snacks, sometimes a new scarf or gloves as the seasons changed. I always included a handwritten note telling her how proud I was. I never knew if she received them. She never mentioned them. Meanwhile, I continued building my business. What had started as a one-woman bookkeeping service had evolved into a small accounting firm. I had hired 2 employees and moved into a proper office. I specialized in helping small to medium-sized businesses organize their finances, minimize tax burdens, and plan for growth. I discovered I had a talent for spotting opportunities others missed. I took online courses in business management and advanced accounting. I networked with local business leaders and began to build a reputation for thoroughness and insight. Some of my clients were startups with fascinating ideas but little financial sense. I enjoyed helping these visionaries translate their dreams into viable business models. As Amanda progressed through college, my business continued to grow. I expanded to 5 employees, then 10. I hired a manager so I could focus on our highest value clients and overall strategy. I began making smart investments first in a few rental properties, then in some of my clients' businesses when I truly believed in their potential. Gradually, almost to my own surprise, I built significant wealth. But my lifestyle remained modest. I moved from our small apartment to a comfortable but not lavish house. I replaced my old Honda only when repair costs became unreasonable. I invested most of my profits back into the business or my retirement fund. I had learned too many lessons about financial insecurity to spend frivolously. I never explicitly told Amanda about my growing success. Whenever I tried to share news about my business, her eyes would glaze over, or she would quickly change the subject. So, eventually, I stopped trying. Our conversations remained superficial, focused mainly on her life and needs. After graduating with a marketing degree, Amanda landed a job at a prestigious firm in Boston. I offered to help her with the security deposit on an apartment, expecting she would need financial assistance. To my surprise, she told me she had already found a place in an upscale neighborhood. "How can you afford that on a starting salary?" I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed with exasperation. "I have roommates, Mom, and not everyone has to pinch pennies their whole life." That comment stung, but I let it pass. I was just happy she had found a good job and seemed excited about her future. As the years passed, our relationship fell into a comfortable but distant pattern. Amanda would call every few weeks, usually while she was commuting or waiting for something else. She would fill me in on surface details about her work, her apartment, sometimes a trip she was planning. She rarely asked about my life, and when she did, she barely listened to my answers. I noticed that Amanda had developed a pattern in her dating life. The men she chose were increasingly wealthy, with prestigious careers and social connections. She would casually drop mentions of their luxury vacations or the exclusive restaurants they frequented. When these relationships ended, as they invariably did, she would move on to someone even more affluent. Each time we met in person, which was rarely, Amanda would make subtle comments about my appearance or lifestyle. "Mom, you should really update your wardrobe. Those styles are so dated." Or, "Have you thought about renovating your kitchen? It looks straight out of the 90s. I recognized the pattern but made excuses for her behavior. She was young and ambitious, I told myself. She was just trying to establish herself in a competitive world. She would eventually mature and recognize what really mattered in life. Meanwhile, I continued to build my success quietly. My firm now specialized in tech startups and small businesses with high growth potential. I had developed an expertise in helping these companies structure their finances to attract investment while maintaining founder control. My client list included several companies that later became household names. I lived comfortably, but without ostentation. I traveled occasionally, donated to causes supporting single mothers, and mentored young women entering financial careers. I found deep satisfaction in my work and the impact I could make. If Amanda noticed none of this, I told myself it didn't matter. Then, on a surprisingly warm spring day, Amanda called with excitement in her voice. "Mom, I'm engaged. His name is James Bradford. He's a project manager at Tech Future. We've been dating for 8 months." "That's wonderful news, sweetheart," I said, genuinely happy for her. "I can't wait to meet him." "We're planning to visit next month," she said. "His parents want a big wedding, so we're thinking next June." "That gives you a year to plan," I replied. "Do you have any ideas about what kind of wedding you want?" Amanda launched into a detailed vision of a lavish ceremony and reception at an exclusive venue with at least 200 guests, designer dresses for her and her bridesmaids, exotic flowers, and gourmet catering. "That sounds beautiful," I said carefully, "but also quite expensive." There was a pause before Amanda replied with an edge in her voice. "We know it's a lot. James' parents are contributing, of course. We don't expect you to strain yourself financially, Mom. We know your situation." My situation, as if I were barely scraping by. I took a deep breath before responding. "Actually, I'd like to help with the wedding expenses," I said. "I've been doing well, and this is important to you." "Wow," Amanda said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I didn't think you had it in you. That's really generous, Mom." I suggested a budget of $75,000, which I knew would cover most of what she had described. The silence on the other end of the line told me I had shocked her. "Are you serious?" she finally asked. "You have that kind of money?" "I've been saving," I said, simply not elaborating on just how successful my business had become. A month later, Amanda arrived with James. He was tall, handsome, and polished in a way that screamed old money and private schools. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. He was unfailingly polite, but I caught the subtle appraisal in his eyes as he took in my modest home and simple furnishings. During dinner, Amanda dominated the conversation, telling stories about her job, their friends, and the apartment they planned to buy after the wedding. When James asked about my work, I started to explain my business. "Oh, Mom just does bookkeeping for small businesses," Amanda interrupted. "Nothing exciting. James' father is CFO of Wellington Industries." I saw James glance at me with what might have been pity. I smiled and changed the subject, asking about his work at Tech Future. As they were leaving, James thanked me for dinner. "It's clear where Amanda gets her determination," he said, which I took as a kind attempt at a compliment. When I hugged Amanda goodbye, she whispered, "Next time, let's go out to eat. I know a great place that can teach you about proper wine pairings." I nodded, swallowing the hurt. This was my daughter's moment, her happiness. I would continue to support her even when her words cut deep. The wedding planning process quickly confirmed what I already suspected. Amanda had little interest in my input beyond my checkbook. She and her wedding planner, a rail-thin woman named Simone, with a perpetual air of barely concealed impatience, scheduled most meetings during my work hours. "We understand you're busy with your little business," Simone said during our first meeting, her voice dripping with condescension. "Just let us know your budget limitations and we'll handle everything." I wrote them a check for $25,000 as a deposit. Simone's eyebrows raised slightly as she glanced at my bank name. "Let me verify this will clear," she said, stepping out of the room. When she returned, her demeanor had shifted noticeably. "Ms. Parker, I apologize for the delay. Your financial institution just needed to confirm the withdrawal. Standard procedure for larger amounts." I knew what had happened. She had called to check if my check would bounce, and instead discovered my excellent credit rating and substantial accounts. The newfound respect in her voice was both satisfying and sad. Why did my worth suddenly increase in her eyes based on a number in a bank account? Amanda seemed oblivious to these dynamics. She breezed through choices for venues, flowers, catering, and dresses, consistently selecting the most expensive options and then adding upgrades. The $75,000 budget was stretched to its limit, but I didn't object. This day meant everything to her. At the venue walkthrough, the manager assumed I was hired help rather than the mother of the bride. As we toured the grand ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and panoramic views, he directed all his comments to Amanda and Simone. "And where will the mother of the bride be seated?" I asked during the discussion of the floor plan. The manager looked at me in surprise. "Oh, I do apologize. I didn't realize—" Amanda jumped in quickly. "Mom, we've already worked out the seating. You'll be at table 6 with Aunt Lisa and some family friends." Table 6, I later discovered, was near the back of the room, far from the head table where Amanda and James would sit with his parents and the wedding party. As the wedding date approached, I was excluded from more traditional mother-of-the-bride activities. Amanda went dress shopping with her future mother-in-law and her bridesmaids. The bridal shower was organized by her maid of honor, and I received an invitation just like any other guest. At the shower, held in the luxurious home of a bridesmaid's parents, I sat quietly as Amanda opened expensive gifts from her friends. Designer linens, crystal barware, artisanal kitchen gadgets that I couldn't identify. When she opened my gift, a handmade quilt I had commissioned from a local artist featuring fabrics from significant moments in Amanda's life, including a square from her first ballet costume, she gave a tight smile. "How rustic," one of her friends commented. "My mom loves crafty things," Amanda replied quickly, moving on to the next gift. I held my composure, reminding myself that this phase of life was about Amanda, not me. But each slight accumulated a growing weight of disappointment I struggled to carry gracefully. The rehearsal dinner hosted by James's parents at an exclusive country club was another exercise in subtle exclusion. I was seated at a back table with distant relatives, while Amanda sat with James, his parents, and the wedding party. Throughout the evening, Amanda barely acknowledged my presence except to briefly introduce me to James's parents as my mom, with no further elaboration on who I was as a person. Later that evening, as I was walking to the restroom, I overheard Amanda talking with her bridesmaids in a small alcove. "Did you see what my mom is wearing?" she said with a laugh. "It's like she found it at a discount store. Thank God his parents are too polite to say anything." "At least she's paying for the wedding," one friend replied. "That must be her entire life savings." "Probably," Amanda agreed. "She's been pinching pennies her whole life, never learned how to enjoy anything." I froze, then quietly retreated, my heart breaking anew. Was this really how my daughter saw me, as some pathetic, miserly woman who had never learned to live? She had no idea of the choices I had made, the priorities I had set, all with her welfare at the center. 2 days before the wedding, Amanda called me with what she termed a small request. "Mom, I was thinking, for the wedding, could you maybe have your hair and makeup done professionally? I know you usually just do your own, but this is going to be a really elegant event." I agreed, though the implication that I couldn't make myself presentable stung. "And one more thing," she continued hesitantly. "When you meet James's family, friends, and colleagues, maybe don't go into detail about your work. Some of them are pretty high up in finance, and it might be awkward." "Awkward how exactly?" I asked, my patience finally wearing thin. "You know, talking about bookkeeping and taxes with people who manage billion-dollar portfolios. Just stick to safe topics like the weather and how beautiful the venue is." I was silent for so long that Amanda prompted, "Mom, are you there?" "Yes," I finally said. "I'll be on my best behavior." "Great, I knew you'd understand. This is just so important for making the right impression with James's connections." After we hung up, I sat in my home office surrounded by evidence of my success. Industry awards, photos with business leaders, financial statements showing the impressive growth of my company and investments, none of which my daughter had ever bothered to notice or ask about. For the first time, I seriously questioned why I continued to accept this treatment. Why did I keep making excuses for Amanda's behavior? Why did I allow her to diminish me, to treat me as if I were nothing more than an ATM with maternal obligations? But even as these questions surfaced, I knew what I would do. I would show up at the wedding with a smile. I would play the role Amanda had cast me in. I would give her this perfect day, even if it meant swallowing my pride once again. Because that's what I had always done. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent decades building financial security, so Amanda would never have to compromise herself the way I sometimes had. Yet here I was, compromising my dignity to maintain a relationship with a daughter who seemed to value me only for what I could provide. Lisa called that evening, sensing something was wrong, as sisters often do. "How are the wedding preparations going?" "Fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything is on track for Saturday." "And how are you holding up?" she pressed. I couldn't lie to Lisa. Never could. "She's ashamed of me," I said, my voice breaking. "Her friends laugh about my clothes and my work. She's asked me not to talk about my business because it might embarrass her in front of James's fancy connections." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Why are you paying for this wedding, Noelle, $75,000 to be treated like an embarrassing obligation?" "Because she's my daughter," I said simply, "and I want her to have the day she's dreamed of." "Even when that dream includes pretending her mother is someone else?" Lisa asked gently. I had no answer for that. The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned clear and perfect, as if the weather itself had received the substantial payment I had made for this day. I arrived early at the luxury hotel where Amanda and her bridesmaids were getting ready. I knocked softly on the suite door, carrying a small blue box containing my grandmother's pearl earrings, something old for Amanda to wear. The maid of honor, Tiffany, opened the door, champagne glass in hand. "Oh, it's you," she said, not unkindly, but without warmth. "Amanda's getting her hair done." I entered a suite transformed into a beauty parlor. 6 young women in matching silk robes moved about, taking selfies, sipping champagne, and cycling through hair and makeup stations. Amanda sat in the center, a stylist working on an elaborate updo while she scrolled through her phone. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, approaching her. "I brought something for you." Amanda glanced up briefly. "Morning, Mom. Can you put it with the other stuff? I'm kind of in the middle of something." I placed the blue box on a side table and stood awkwardly, unsure of my place in this carefully choreographed morning. No one offered me champagne or suggested I sit. I was clearly an intruder in this scene. "Your appointment is at 11 p.m., Amanda said, noticing me still standing there. "Suite 712. The makeup artist knows what to do." "I thought maybe we could have a moment together first," I said quietly. "Before everything gets too busy." Amanda sighed. "Mom, we're on a really tight schedule. The photographer is coming in an hour for bridesmaids' photos. Maybe later, okay?" I nodded and retreated, making my way to Suite 712, where a young woman with purple-streaked hair and multiple piercings waited to transform me. "Mother of the bride?" she asked, gesturing me to a chair. "Yes," I confirmed, sitting down. "Any specific look you're going for?" I shrugged. "Apparently, I need to look more elegant than usual." She smiled sympathetically. "Don't worry. I'll make you look like you belong at a fancy wedding, but still like yourself." 2 hours later, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. My usually simple bob had been styled into soft waves. My minimal makeup routine had been replaced by expertly applied cosmetics that somehow made me look both enhanced and natural. The woman in the reflection looked sophisticated, polished, and yes, elegant. When I returned to Amanda's suite, now dressed in the navy blue mother of the bride dress I had purchased for the occasion, the bridesmaids were gathered for photos. They were all beautiful in matching rose gold dresses, Amanda stunning in the center in her white lace gown. "Mom," Amanda said, looking me over with mild surprise. "You look nice." It was the closest thing to a compliment I had received from her in years. "Thanks, honey. You look absolutely breathtaking." Amanda smiled briefly before the photographer called for another pose. I watched from the sidelines as they took dozens of photos in various configurations. Not once was I invited to join. As I stood there, a memory surfaced of Amanda at 7 years old, twirling in a homemade princess costume I had stayed up all night to finish for her school play. "You're the best mom ever," she had declared, throwing her small arms around my neck. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you." Where had that sweet child gone? When had appreciation turned to embarrassment? Then, to something approaching disdain. Had I somehow created this outcome through my own choices? The ceremony was beautiful in its flawless, impersonal perfection. Amanda had chosen to walk down the aisle with James's father rather than asking me. I sat in the front row alone on the bride's side, while James's mother was surrounded by family on the groom's side. As Amanda floated past in her designer gown, she looked radiant, happy, completely in her element among the splendor. I cried during the vows, of course. Any mother would. But my tears carried a complexity of emotions that the other guests couldn't have guessed. Joy for Amanda's happiness, yes. But also grief for the relationship we didn't have, for the mother of the bride I had imagined being, for the appreciation I had foolishly expected. After the ceremony, the 200 guests made their way to the grand ballroom for the reception. I followed the place cards to table 6, where I was seated with Lisa and her husband, a distant cousin from our father's side, and 2 elderly friends of James' family who had been placed there seemingly because no one knew what to do with them. "You holding up okay?" Lisa whispered as we took our seats. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Your dress is gorgeous," she said. "You look beautiful, Noelle." Lisa had always seen me, really seen me, even when Amanda didn't. The first hour of the reception passed in a blur of small talk with my table companions. Amanda made the rounds to each table, spending mere moments at ours, before being whisked away to greet more important guests. James stopped by briefly, polite but distracted, clearly moving through a social obligation before returning to his friends. Twice during that first hour, guests approached me asking about timeline details, assuming I was the wedding coordinator. Both times, I gently corrected them, explaining I was the mother of the bride. Both times, their surprise was evident. "Oh, I'm so sorry," one woman said. "It's just that you're not sitting at the family table, so I assumed." I smiled graciously. "It's fine." The seating was arranged to accommodate various groups. When dinner was served, I made conversation with James' parents' friends, an elderly couple who had known his family for decades. The gentleman, upon learning I was Amanda's mother, asked about my work. Before I could answer, Lisa jumped in. "My sister runs a successful financial services firm. She's being modest, but she's quite accomplished." The couple seemed impressed, and for a brief moment, I felt a flash of my true self being recognized in this space where I had been rendered nearly invisible. After dinner came the toasts. James's father spoke first, charming and eloquent about welcoming Amanda to their family. The best man followed with appropriate humor about James's bachelor days. Then Amanda, several glasses of champagne into the evening, took the microphone. She began by thanking everyone for coming, acknowledging her new in-laws for their generosity and support, and expressing her happiness at finding James. Then she turned toward my table. "And I want to thank my mom, who somehow managed to pull together enough money for this beautiful wedding. Growing up with just the 2 of us wasn't always easy." A sympathetic murmur went through the crowd, and my heart sank. This was not going to be the appreciative acknowledgement I had hoped for. "Mom ran this quaint little bookkeeping business from our apartment," Amanda continued, her words slightly slurred. "I remember how excited she would get when she landed a new client. She would do this little dance around the kitchen." She demonstrated doing an exaggerated, awkward shimmy that drew laughter from the crowd. It was nothing like any dance I had ever done. "We didn't have much, but Mom was always so proud of her little victories. Driving that ancient Honda until it practically fell apart. Finding bargains at discount stores. She used to say, 'Who needs fancy when functional does the job?'" More laughter. My face burned, but I maintained my smile even as tears threatened. "I remember this one time we went to a nice restaurant for my high school graduation. Mom was so out of place. She kept asking the waiter questions about every item on the menu and ended up ordering the cheapest thing. When the wine list came, oh my God, you should have seen her face." Amanda mimicked an expression of confused panic that again bore no resemblance to anything I had ever displayed. The 200 guests roared with laughter. I sat frozen, smiling rigidly through the public humiliation. Lisa gripped my hand under the table so hard it hurt, but I was grateful for the anchor. "But seriously," Amanda continued, raising her glass, "I do want to thank my mom for working so hard all these years. I know this wedding probably cost your entire savings, and I appreciate the sacrifice." The room applauded politely as Amanda returned to her seat, clearly pleased with her performance. I maintained my composed expression, though inside, I was shattered. My daughter had just reduced my entire life to a punchline, a cautionary tale of a small, frugal existence that the wealthy crowd should feel simultaneously amused by and superior to. As the applause died down, I noticed something strange happening at the head table. An older gentleman with silver hair was staring at me with an intensity that was unnerving. He leaned over to whisper something to James, whose expression quickly transformed from amusement to shock, then embarrassment. The silver-haired man stood abruptly and approached the MC, requesting the microphone. The MC, looking surprised, handed it over. The room quieted as the man made his way directly to my table. "Good evening," he said to the crowd, but his eyes were fixed on me. "For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Coleman, CEO of Tech Future and James' boss. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I've just had quite the surprising realization." He turned to face me fully. "Excuse me, but are you Noel Parker of Parker Financial Strategies?" The room went completely still. I nodded, confused by this unexpected attention. Richard Coleman broke into a wide smile. "I thought so. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to correct a misconception that seems to have developed here tonight. Noel Parker," Richard continued, his voice carrying clearly through the now silent ballroom. "Do you remember me from about 15 years ago? Struggling tech startup, financial disaster? About 2 weeks from complete bankruptcy." I studied his face, recognition slowly dawning. "Coleman Tech Solutions," I said. "Small office in the industrial park. You had brilliant software but terrible financial management." "That's right," he exclaimed, looking delighted. "Folks, let me tell you a story about the woman who just got characterized as running a quaint little bookkeeping business." From the corner of my eye, I could see Amanda frozen at the head table, champagne glass suspended midway to her mouth. 15 years ago, I had a great idea and no business sense whatsoever," Richard continued. "I was burning through my startup capital at an alarming rate, making every rookie mistake in the book. My banker, in a last-ditch effort to save me from myself, referred me to Noel Parker." He gestured toward me with clear respect. "This woman came to my messy office, took one look at my chaotic books, and proceeded to work financial magic. She restructured everything, negotiated with my creditors, created a sustainable business model, and essentially saved my company from certain death." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as guests began to realize this wasn't going the direction they had expected. "Noelle worked nights and weekends to restructure our finances. She connected us with our first serious investors. When I offered her equity in my struggling company as part of her payment, she declined, saying she preferred to be paid fairly for her services rendered and that mixing business relationships wasn't her style." Richard laughed. "That equity would be worth about $20 million today, by the way. Tech Future, where our Groom James works, is the company that grew from those humble beginnings." I could feel every eye in the room on me now. At the head table, Amanda looked like she might faint. James was staring at me with newfound wonder and confusion. "But here's what really astounds me," Richard continued. "I had no idea that the Noel Parker who saved my company was the same Noel Parker whose firm now handles financial strategy for dozens of the top tech companies in our region. Parker Financial Strategies has become one of the most respected consulting firms in the industry." Another wave of murmurs swept the room. I saw Simone, the wedding planner, suddenly standing much straighter, her expression a mixture of shock and recalculation. For those of you in the business world, you might be interested to know that Ms. Parker's firm has guided 7 unicorn startups through their growth phases. Her investment strategies are legendary, and perhaps most impressive to me personally, she has established one of the largest educational funds for single parents returning to school or starting businesses. Richard turned to face me directly. Noelle, your modesty is matched only by your brilliance, and I should add that when James applied for a position at Tech Future, your name in his background check as a family connection certainly didn't hurt his prospects. James's expression was priceless, a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and dawning respect. So, Richard concluded, raising his glass, I'd like to propose a toast to Noelle Parker. Not for the quaint little business described earlier, but for being one of the most respected financial minds in our industry, a silent force behind countless successful companies, and apparently a mother who never felt the need to boast about her extraordinary accomplishments even when it might have been justified. The room erupted in applause. Lisa was squeezing my arm, grinning broadly. The elderly couple at our table looked at me with new appreciation, and Amanda, when I dared to glance her way, was white as a sheet. Richard extended his hand to me. Noelle, would you do us the honor of joining the head table? I believe there's been an oversight in the seating arrangements. In that moment, I had a choice. I could accept the vindication Richard was offering, move to the head table in triumph, and watch Amanda squirm with embarrassment. Part of me, the part that had been hurt repeatedly over the years, wanted exactly that. But looking at my daughter's face, I saw something beyond embarrassment. I saw genuine shock, confusion, and the beginning of what might be shame. I saw a young woman whose carefully constructed narrative about her life was crumbling before 200 witnesses. Thank you for the kind words, Richard, I said, rising. I'd be happy to catch up later, but I'm quite comfortable with my sister and the lovely people at this table. Richard nodded, understanding in his eyes. As gracious as ever, he commented before returning the microphone to the MC. The band quickly started playing, breaking the charged atmosphere. But the dynamic in the room had fundamentally shifted. People who had barely glanced at me earlier now found reasons to stop by table 6. Business cards appeared. Conversations about investment opportunities and financial advice broke out. The wedding coordinator, who had treated me with barely concealed condescension, was suddenly attentive to my every need. Through it all, I maintained my composure, neither gloating nor shrinking. This wasn't how I had expected Amanda's perfect day to unfold, but perhaps it was necessary. After about 20 minutes of this new reality, I saw Amanda making her way determinedly toward my table. Her expression was a complex mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. Mom, can we talk? She asked, her voice tight. Privately. I nodded and followed her to a small anteroom off the main ballroom. As soon as the door closed behind us, she whirled to face me. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, her voice a mixture of anger and bewilderment. All these years, why did you let me believe we were barely getting by? I took a moment to collect my thoughts before responding. Amanda, I tried to share my successes with you many times over the years. You never showed any interest in my work or my life. But you never said you were some big-shot financial guru. You let me think you were just doing taxes and bookkeeping in that little office. Would it have made a difference? I asked quietly. Would you have been prouder to introduce me to your friends if you had known I was wealthy and successful? The question hung between us. Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it again, having no ready answer. The truth is, I continued, I did try to tell you. Remember when I moved the business to the downtown office, when I was featured in Business Monthly, when I won the Entrepreneur of the Year award? I mentioned all these things, but you always changed the subject. Amanda's eyes welled with tears. I thought you were exaggerating, making your small achievements sound bigger than they were. Why would you think that? She looked away. Because all my friends had parents with impressive careers and big houses and luxury cars. I couldn't imagine my mom, who always shopped sales and drove old cars, being actually successful. Success isn't always about outward displays of wealth, Amanda. I know that now, she said, her voice small. But growing up, I just felt inadequate compared to my friends. Their families had so much, and I thought we had so little. I guess I resented you for that, for making me feel like we were always struggling. We weren't struggling, I said gently. I was building something. I was planning for the future, your future. But why live so modestly if you didn't have to? Why make all those sacrifices? Some were choices, not sacrifices. I didn't want to raise you to believe happiness comes from expensive things. And honestly, after growing up with financial insecurity, I found comfort in living below my means, knowing we were protected if anything went wrong. Amanda was quiet for a moment, processing this. I feel so stupid, she finally said. All those years of being embarrassed of you, and you were this success story the whole time. Being embarrassed of me hurt, I admitted. But what hurt more was feeling invisible to you, like my only value was what I could provide. Amanda's tears spilled over. I didn't see you, she whispered. I was so caught up in what I thought our life should look like that I never saw who you actually were. For the first time in many years, I felt like my daughter was really looking at me, seeing beyond the role of mom to the complex person beneath. It was both painful and healing. And now I've humiliated myself in front of everyone, she continued, distress evident in her voice. James looks mortified. His parents probably think I'm horrible. It's your wedding day, I said. People will focus on the celebration, not this moment of confusion. Amanda wiped her eyes carefully, mindful of her makeup. How are you so calm? I just publicly mocked you in front of everyone, and you're comforting me. Because you're my daughter, and I love you. That's never changed, even when your behavior hurt me. She stepped forward and hugged me, then a real embrace, unlike the perfunctory ones we had shared in recent years. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. I've been awful to you. We can do better going forward, I said, returning the hug. That's all that matters now. As we separated, the door opened and James appeared, looking hesitant. Sorry to interrupt, he said. The photographer wants some family photos and people are asking where the bride is. Amanda nodded. We'll be right there. She turned back to me. Mom, will you stand with me for these photos? Not just the obligatory ones, but really with me. Of course, I said, grateful for this small but significant shift. James lingered after Amanda left. Ms. Parker, he began, then corrected himself. Noelle, I owe you an apology too. I made assumptions based on what Amanda told me, and I didn't give you the respect you deserved. We're family now, I said. We have time to get to know each other properly. I had no idea you were the Noelle Parker of Parker Financial Strategies, he admitted. I've read case studies about your work in my MBA program, and then to find out you're the connection that Richard mentioned during my hiring process, I'm mortified that I've been so condescending. Don't be too hard on yourself, I said. Or on Amanda. We all make mistakes in how we see people. I'd really like to learn from you, he said with genuine interest. My background is in project management, but I've been trying to develop more financial acumen. We'll have plenty of time for that, I assured him. But right now, you should get back to your wedding reception. There are 200 people waiting to celebrate with you both. As we returned to the ballroom, I noticed the atmosphere had shifted. Richard Coleman was now seated at my table, chatting animatedly with Lisa. The crowd seemed to part slightly as Amanda, James, and I walked through. I could feel curious glances and hear whispered conversations. Amanda squeezed my hand. Mom, I know this isn't the wedding day either of us imagined, but can we try to enjoy the rest of it together? I nodded, feeling a cautious hope. I'd like that very much. For the remainder of the evening, something had fundamentally changed. Amanda included me in conversations, introduced me properly to James' colleagues, and made sure I was part of the celebration. When Richard asked me to share some thoughts, I gave a brief heartfelt toast about love growth and seeing beyond appearances to the true worth of individuals. The message wasn't lost on anyone present, least of all Amanda. It wasn't perfect. Years of emotional distance couldn't be bridged in a single evening. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that had grown between us. And for now, that was enough. The morning after the wedding, I sat in my hotel room reflecting on the previous day's events. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Are you free for breakfast before we leave for the airport? Just us. We met in the hotel restaurant, both of us still processing everything that had happened. Amanda looked younger somehow without her elaborate wedding makeup, more like the girl I remembered. I hardly slept, she admitted as the waiter poured our coffee. I kept replaying everything in my head. All those years of being embarrassed by you, and you were this successful businesswoman the whole time. It's not about the success, I said carefully. It's about the respect. I would have deserved that regardless of whether my business succeeded or failed. Amanda nodded slowly. I know. That's what makes me feel even worse. I judged you based on such superficial things. Why do you think that happened? I asked. It was a question I had pondered for years. Amanda was quiet for a moment. When I got to middle school, suddenly everything was about status. The right clothes, the right neighborhood, the right family setup. And we didn't fit. No dad's small apartment mom who worked all the time. I was working to give you opportunities. I know that now, but kids are cruel and I wanted to fit in so badly. I started being embarrassed, then it became a habit. By college, I was reinventing my background for new friends. It was easier than explaining our real life. And after college? By then, I was deep into a world where appearances meant everything. My job, my friends, the men I dated, it was all about projecting success and status. I couldn't reconcile that with how I saw you. So I kept you separate from that part of my life. I nodded understanding, even though it hurt. And when did the resentment start? Amanda looked surprised by the question. I wasn't resentful. Amanda, I said gently, the way you spoke about me yesterday wasn't just embarrassment. There was real contempt there. Tears welled in her eyes. Maybe I resented the sacrifices you made for me. They made me feel guilty, like I owed you something I could never repay. It was easier to minimize what you did than to acknowledge the debt. It was an honest answer, painfully so. You never owed me for loving you, I said. That's what parents do. Not all parents, she countered. James's friends have parents who barely know them who outsource their child-rearing to nannies. You gave me everything, your whole self. It was overwhelming sometimes. We sat with that uncomfortable truth for a moment. Had my devotion somehow contributed to this dynamic? Had my sacrifices created a burden of expectation Amanda couldn't bear? I'm sorry if my love felt like pressure, I finally said. It wasn't that, she replied quickly. It was my response to it. I couldn't live up to being worthy of all you gave, so I devalued it instead. It's messed up, I know. We both made mistakes, I acknowledged. I probably should have been more transparent about our finances, helped you understand the difference between choosing to live simply and being poor. I probably wouldn't have understood anyway, Amanda said with a sad smile. I was pretty self-absorbed. The waiter brought our breakfast, giving us a moment to collect our thoughts. "So, where do we go from here?" Amanda asked after he left. "Forward," I said simply, with more honesty and probably some uncomfortable conversations. "I'd like that," she said. "I want to know the real you, not the version I made up in my head." "And I want to know the real you, too. Not just the daughter role, but who you are as a person." Amanda nodded. "It might take time. I'm not sure I even know who I am without all the pretense." "We have time," I assured her. "And speaking of honesty, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." Amanda looked up curious. "I'm really proud of what you've accomplished in your career. I know I don't understand all the details of what you do in marketing, but I see your drive and determination. That came from somewhere deep inside you, not from me or the advantages I tried to give you." Her eyes welled up again. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." As we finished breakfast, Amanda asked about my business, showing genuine interest perhaps for the first time. I told her about recent projects, my long-term plans, my quiet philanthropy. She listened attentively, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. When we parted at the lobby, her leaving for her honeymoon, and me to return home, our hug felt different. More equal, somehow less like a formality, and more like a genuine connection between two adults who were beginning to see each other clearly. "I'll call you when we get back," she promised. "Not just out of obligation. I want to talk more." "I'd like that," I said, believing her for the first time in years. In the weeks following the wedding, Amanda and James returned from their honeymoon to their new life together. True to her word, Amanda called regularly, not just brief check-ins, but real conversations. She asked about my work, my friends, my interests beyond being her mother. Sometimes the talks were awkward as we navigated this new territory, but the effort on both sides was genuine. A month after the wedding, Amanda and James invited me to dinner at their new apartment. I arrived bearing a simple housewarming gift, unsure what to expect. The apartment was elegant, but not ostentatious. Amanda greeted me warmly, taking my coat and leading me on a tour. I noticed small touches that surprised me. Personal items displayed that didn't necessarily fit the perfect aesthetic, including a framed photo of young Amanda and me at the beach, one I didn't even know she had kept. "James is running a little late," she explained. "Work meeting, but I thought maybe we could talk while we wait for him." She led me to a comfortable sitting area where tea was already prepared. I noticed a file folder on the coffee table. "What's this?" I asked as we sat down. Amanda looked nervous. "Since the wedding, I've been thinking a lot about who I've been and who I want to be. I realized I've spent years trying to be what I thought other people wanted, especially in my work." She opened the folder to reveal business plans and sketches. "I've had this idea for years but never pursued it. A marketing consultancy specifically for small businesses and startups, helping them compete against bigger companies without massive budgets." I looked through her materials, impressed by the thought she had put into this. "This is really good, Amanda. You've identified a real gap in the market." "I was hoping maybe you could help me think through the financial side," she said hesitantly. "I mean, if you want to. No pressure." The request touched me deeply, not just because she was asking for my professional expertise, but because she was sharing a dream with me, inviting me into her future. "I'd be honored," I said sincerely. "I don't expect you to fund it," she added quickly. "James and I have savings, and I need to do this on my own, but your advice would be invaluable." "Of course," I assured her. "And Amanda, I'm really proud of you for considering this path. It takes courage to step away from the security of an established role." She smiled a genuine smile that reminded me of her childhood. "I think I get that courage from you, Mom. I just didn't recognize it until now." When James arrived, he joined our discussion enthusiastically. I watched them interact, noting the respect in their relationship. He valued her ideas, and she listened to his input. Perhaps the wedding revelation had shifted something for them too, allowed for more authenticity between them. As months passed, our relationship continued to evolve. There were still missteps and old patterns that occasionally surfaced, but we addressed them honestly rather than retreating into our former roles. Amanda launched her consultancy with my guidance, but on her own financial terms. I watched with pride as she applied her marketing skills to clients who truly needed her expertise, rather than just seeking status from their agency association. Approximately a year after the wedding, Amanda and James invited me to a special dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant, I found not just them, but also Lisa and her husband waiting at the table. After we ordered, Amanda reached for James's hand, then looked around the table with nervous excitement. "We have some news," she announced. "I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother mom." Joy surged through me, but what meant even more than the news itself was being included in this moment, being treated as an essential part of their lives rather than an obligation. Later that evening, as we were finishing dessert, Amanda grew contemplative. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "About being a mom. What if I mess it up?" "Every parent feels that way," I assured her. "But you have so much love to give, Amanda. That's what matters most." "I keep thinking about how I treated you all those years," she said. "What if my child treats me that way someday?" "Parenting isn't about guarantees," I said. "It's about doing your best with what you know at the time, then forgiving yourself and your child when mistakes happen." "You make it sound so simple." "It's the furthest thing from simple," I laughed. "But it's worth every difficult moment." Amanda placed her hand over mine on the table. "I hope I can be half the mother you are. You'll be your own kind of mother," I told her, "and that will be exactly what your child needs." The healing between us wasn't instantaneous or complete. Real healing rarely is. There were still moments of tension, old hurts, that resurfaced unexpectedly. But we were committed to the process, to seeing each other as complete people, rather than just the roles we had played for so long. I learned that true wealth isn't measured by financial success or social status. It's found in authentic connections, in being seen and valued for who you truly are. I had spent decades building financial security while neglecting to demand the emotional recognition I deserved from the person who mattered most to me. Amanda learned that appearances can be deceiving, that the values she had dismissed as old-fashioned and limiting, like living below your means and finding satisfaction in work well done, had created the very security that allowed her to pursue her dreams. And we both learned that it's never too late to start again, to see each other with new eyes, and build a relationship based on who we really are, rather than who we thought we should be. As I prepare to welcome my first grandchild, I reflect on the journey that brought us here. From the public humiliation at the wedding to the quiet healing that followed each step, has taught me something valuable about love, forgiveness, and self-worth. True forgiveness isn't a single moment, but a process that unfolds over time. True wealth isn't what others see, but what you know in your heart. And true love perseveres even when it's not recognized, waiting patiently for the moment of genuine connection. To anyone who has felt invisible or undervalued, especially by those closest to you, I want you to know that your worth isn't determined by others' perception. Keep building, keep growing, and most importantly, keep believing in your own value. The people who matter will eventually see it too, even if the recognition comes in unexpected ways. Have you ever been underestimated by someone important to you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth. Remember, sometimes the most painful moments in our lives become the catalyst for the most beautiful transformations. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to be authentically yourself, regardless of whether others recognize your true worth.